Some good friends of mine are getting married soon, so I had love on the mind when I came across this article that asks atheists about love. Let's check it out. All my atheist friends and family members believe in love. But what is love? As always, the best, nay, only response to what is love, and say it with me, is of course, baby don't hurt me, no more. Right. Here's a question. If humans have no soul and are merely evolutionary advanced animals, is love anything more than instinct or hormones? The feelings of love that people have, yes, at its root, can be traced to chemical changes in the brain. So what? Just because we know it causes certain feelings, does that mean we should just dismiss them? Knowing that love is, as you say, instinct or hormones, doesn't mean I feel it any less than someone who is ignorant of that fact. In a letter to his 10-year-old daughter, atheist Richard Dawkins explains the importance of evidence in science and in life. People sometimes say that you must believe in feelings deep inside, otherwise you'd be never confident of things like, my wife loves me. But this is a bad argument. There can be plenty of evidence that somebody loves you. All through the day, when you are with someone who loves you, you see and hear lots of little tidbits of evidence, and they all add up. It isn't purely inside feeling, like the feeling that priests call revelation. There are outside things to back up the inside feeling. Looks in the eye, tender notes in the voice, little favors and kindness. This is all real evidence. What he is saying sure does sound like what priests talk about. No, what I've heard from the religious is that love is some ineffable mystical connection that transcends the physical world. What Professor Dawkins is talking about is that we can determine how somebody feels by observing their actions and reactions. How we act, both consciously and subconsciously, can give clues as to our emotional state. When I'm feeling down, I know that my wife will attempt to cheer me up, or at least share my feelings of depression and commiserate with me. And when something good happens to one of us, I know the other will feel happy as well. When I was hospitalized with a cardiac issue a few years ago, I was hooked up to a heart monitor. The doctors noticed an increase in my heart activity whenever my wife walked into the room during visiting hours. And my friends can attest to how my wife and I show our love for each other, usually by causing them to feel nauseous at our overly cute actions, but they do observe it. But if love is not exclusively religious, then what is it? Let's explore the two most basic forms of love. Love of a parent for a child and the nuptial love between husband and wife. When mommy says to her 1-year-old, I love you, the atheist says she is not expressing anything metaphysical or spiritual. In fact, says the atheist, the mother is verbalizing the instinct to preserve her species, just as a mommy zebra protects and fosters the growth of the baby zebra. That's it, nothing more. It is instinct combined with verbal tags. When a parent loves her child, she is just adding a verbal cue to an advanced evolutionary instinct to carry on the species. It makes sense that we evolved a reason to care about our children. Human children, more so than any other animal, are dependent on elders. If we took two groups of parents, one that developed emotional attachments to their children, and one that, well, didn't give a rat's ass either way, which do you think would have a better chance of having children that survived? That feeling of love is an evolutionary tool that helps us thrive. The ability to have an emotional connection that we enjoy aids in the continuation of the species. And it's not always a biological connection. My wife inherited the ability to have an emotional connection and love both my children. Even though they weren't related to her by blood, they were her kids. Some parents can love their kids without a biological connection, and some parents who do have that biological connection simply don't feel the emotional one. The same empirical reality is true between two lovers. For the atheist, nothing sacramental, metaphysical, or spiritual is happening in a loving relationship. The two don't become one flesh, as we say in biblical and matrimonial language, any more than a rooster and a hen become one flesh. What does become one flesh even mean? That passage in Mark says that when two people fall in love and marry, they were joined by God and will never break apart. But sadly, people do fall out of love. My ex and I fell out of love, which honestly was a good thing. Neither of us were really right for each other. I know that I could lose my wife, and I live in terror of that prospect, which is why I work hard to continue showing my love and earning hers, and she does the same for me. If a couple became one flesh, as mentioned in Mark, then there would be no way they could fall out of love. And divorce rates, which happily are going down, still show that sadly this is not always the case. When a man says, "I love you" to his wife, he is simply expressing something about his hormonal levels towards her as a mate. What he is really saying is, "My hormones surge for you," not "you are my soulmate," because the atheist doesn't believe in souls or metaphysical connections between humans. Gotta stop you there. Atheists can believe in a soul. Most don't, but that doesn't mean none do. They just don't believe in an omnipotent creator deity. Sorry for the short aside. Let's get back to the article. Incidentally, a man's hormones might start surging for another woman, or several women, at some point. The same man might also be ready to say "I love you" to these new women too. We can? That's great news. Hey sweetie, this guy just said we can love other women as well. So, is it cool if my hormones surge for another woman sometime?
Why not? It would shake things up if you disappoint another woman for a change.
Quiet you. This position, if true, would produce the most dreadful Valentines cards, such as, "Would you be my Valentine? I want to buy you dinner. My evolved breeding instincts respond well to you. Your physical appearance sets off a hormonal response in me to mate with you." Seriously? Where can I get cards like that? My wife would love to get those cards, because she is both smart enough to understand why we feel love for each other and self-aware enough to enjoy a card with phrases like that. A lot of theists have this idea that if we can understand something, it's no longer special. Yes, my wife and I can understand the chemical and biological reasons we feel the way we feel for each other. That doesn't mean that our love doesn't feel as good to us as it would be if we were ignorant of the compounds that flood our brains when we think of one another. If there is no soul, then there is only the bubbling of the brain. There is only the response to stimuli and hormones. Yet Catholics root love in the soul. The problem for atheists, of course, is that the soul is a metaphysical reality that assumes the existence of God, or at least the supernatural. No, that's a problem for theists. You can claim that love roots in the soul, but what evidence do you have to substantiate that claim? Empirical evidence shows that the brain floods with several different chemical compounds producing the feelings for different emotions. For example, love. What evidence, not claims, but evidence do you have that our emotional reactions like love are rooted in the soul, or even what a soul is, or that it exists? When I love a friend, as a Christian, I mean I love you, body and soul. But for an atheist, friendship is an evolved behavior related to living in a pack or herd or tribe. At root, it has to do with self-protection and food acquisition. Yeah. We're social creatures. We survive and thrive when working together. It makes sense that we evolved the ability to have an emotional connection to those around us. Groups that developed an emotional attachment, or even just empathy, for those in the group would thrive against those who are just in it for themselves. One of the great things about the information age is that we can connect with others over vast distances. We have evolved the ability to have empathy, and technology allows us to have a connection with others farther away than our ancestors ever imagined. Even people we can never meet, we can see or hear about their plights and have an emotional response. That's why I can feel sympathy for somebody I've never met going through hard times, like having their homes destroyed by a natural disaster, or having to live under a dictator. I'd be interested in hearing how other atheists, besides Dawkins, would describe love to their daughters. I'd also like someone to help clarify Dawkins' claim that there are outside things to back up the inside feeling. Looks in the eye, tender notes in the voice, little favors and kindnesses. This is all real evidence. What is this inside-outside dichotomy? It sure sounds like what we Christians have called soul-body for over 2,000 years. First off, in the passage you quoted, Dawkins was not describing what love is, but rather that we can use our observations to show that somebody loves another, not just take it on faith. The inside-outside dichotomy that you mention is simply that there are external cues that we can use to determine the emotional response people have. I can't always directly observe the dopamine that floods my wife's brain when she thinks of me, but in the same way that dark matter can be shown to exist by its effects on observable matter, I can see the effects the chemical changes have on her. If you are claiming that the difference between internal chemical reactions and external evidence of said reactions is the same as soul and body, and our internal emotions are just chemical reactions, does that mean that what you claim is your soul is nothing more than the chemical stimuli that we feel when our brains produce the different biological response to outside events? and that theologians have confused these chemical reactions in their brains with what they refer to as a soul, how can an atheist say he loves someone and not mean anything more than instinct and hormones? I would especially like to hear from female atheists. Is love only a physical response? Well, I'm a male. Hey, thin ice. But here's my reply. Yes, it's a physical response. Ultimately, everything that happens that I can think of is a physical reaction of some kind. But does knowing how something occurs diminish it in any way? Being mysterious doesn't automatically make things better. Okay, one exception. But does a rose not smell just as sweet if we know the chemical composition of the molecules and how our olfactory receptors respond to those chemicals? Do sunsets become less beautiful if we know it's a ball of hydrogen over 100 times bigger than our planet? And does loving somebody feel even a fraction less special if we know the chemicals that flood our brain when we think of our loved ones?